Well, hey YouTube, welcome back once again to Jack's Tech Hut. And this series has been very exciting for me to do, and I've been very pleased to do it for you and be able to bring it your way. And I see a few more people are actually watching these videos, and that is totally awesome. But folks, when you watch this video, please do me a favor. I'm not even going to ask you right now. I'm going to ask you at the end of this video. We'll talk about that then. But I hope that you're enjoying this series on penetration testing and a little bit of white hat hacking and maybe even a little bit of knowledge of black hat hackers and how they work. So folks, let's go ahead and get right to it today, to the topic at hand. And this is downloading and setting up Kali Linux as a virtual machine. Now, I showed you in the last lesson. If you didn't look at that yet, go back and watch it. It's how to download and set up VirtualBox. We're going to use VirtualBox as our virtualization software. All right, let's go ahead and get right to the computer. So what I wanted to talk to you a little bit first about, and I know it's a little bit of boring stuff here, but we have to get the theory out of the way. You have to know a little bit of theory before you know the actual workings of the computer. So we're talking about downloading Kali Linux and setting up a virtual machine. So what is Kali Linux? Why do we use Kali Linux? Kali Linux has approximately 600 penetration testing program tools. So the tools are already built in. I had somebody in class today ask me, they said, well, hey, Jack's Tech Hut guy. They said, well, can't you use any version of Linux? You can, but then you have to install the tools. You have to maybe compile them, get them working right. If that sounds scary and time consuming, it is. It's better to have a package already built that we can have all of our tools in there that we can use. Some people even streamline these packages and delete the ones they don't want. They uninstall those. And they just keep the ones that they're going to focus on using, because you don't have to use all 600 of them. A lot of the tools in here are tools and they're duplicate tools. Many of there could be 10 tools that do the same kind of thing, like password cracking, for instance. So these tools are basically a set of 600 tools. Nmap is a port scanner. Wireshark is a packet analyzer. I'm going to show you that. Metasploit is a penetration testing framework. Metasploit will allow you to get into a computer system that's unpatched very, very easily, and I'll show you where the exploits are. You can also make backdoor Trojans with Metasploit and put those onto somebody's computer system and have full access to that. John the Ripper is a password cracker. SQL Map, if you don't know what SQL is, that's okay, you'll learn later. But SQL is a database engine, and this will allow you to actually get into that database engine and take over some of the databases. Aircrack NG is a suite of penetration tools that allows you to crack wireless passwords and wireless LANs. The Burp Suite and OWASP, O-W-A-S-P, ZAP, are web application security scanners. So you can actually learn how to penetrate a web server by going right through their front door. And I think that's totally awesome. It was developed by Mata, and I'm not going to pronounce the last name, A-H-A-R-O-N-I, and Devin Kearns of Offensive Security through the rewrite of what used to be called Backtrack. Years ago, instead of using Kali Linux, it was called Backtrack. Backtrack was also an open source program, but it's no longer worked on. So these guys took it over and they renamed it Kali Linux, and they're still working on it today. So anyway, there was another distribution of Linux called Knoppix, K-N-O-P-P-I-X. The name was inspired by the Hindu goddess Kali. So what is Linux? Now, if you've never heard of Linux, you might have been living under a rock. If you're new to technology, maybe you never heard about Linux, right? Maybe you just use Windows all the time. And that absolutely makes sense. And it's fine to use Windows. Don't get me wrong. A little coffee there tonight. My students actually said, well, why do you use Linux on your desktop computer? I use Linux because it's safe, it's more secure, and it doesn't get spyware and malware like Windows. You don't have all those troubles. We don't have to scan Linux all the time to clean it up. So I really enjoy using Linux. Now, for this series, you may notice that I'm on a Windows computer, and that's because I want to work on the same computer that you're working on. So I can show you these techniques because I know probably about 80% of you out there are running some version of Windows. But Linux is an open source operating system. So what does that mean? What's open source? Open source just means the software is open. All the code is there for you to do whatever you want to with it. You know, if you feel so inclined and you like coding and maybe you're coding in C or C++, you can get in there and you can work on the code. You can contribute to the project. The Linux operating kernel was first released in September 17th of 1991 by Linus Torvalds. Okay, Linus Torvalds. It's Torvalds. Now, he actually did it, and I don't know if it says it in this article. He actually wrote it when he was going to college. He needed an operating system. He didn't like what was currently available out in the world. So he took the idea of the Unix operating system and he started tinkering around with it. And at the end of the day, he came up with Linux, right? It was great. He's a very smart guy and he was able to write his own operating system. So that is kind of in a nutshell an overview. Now we are going to go through Linux a little bit more. We're going to do some deep dives in it. I think I want to show you around a little bit and get you more accustomed to the Linux operating system, how it works, get you a little less afraid of the terminal. That's important because we're going to use the terminal a lot when we're running Kali Linux because a lot of the programs don't have a GUI or a graphical user interface. So we're going to make it very easy on you and show you how to get in there, use the terminal, and not be afraid of it. I've taught students these same lessons for several years now, and when they left my class, they were all very comfortable. Did they know all the commands? No. You're not going to remember all the commands, but you're going to take great notes. That's part of this series. Get a notebook out. I say use Evernote, use you can use Notion, the online note keepers, whatever you want to do. But take some notes because it's going to help you down the road. You don't have to refer back to all these videos. So where can you find Kali Linux? Somebody asked me today, well, how much does it cost? It doesn't cost anything. It's absolutely free. It was put out in the world. Now, do these companies take donations? Absolutely. And if you can kick them $5 or $10, do so, right? I do every now and then if I can think. I don't get on a monthly donation plan, but I do like to kick them $10 or $5 or $10 here and there when I can, or when I think about it, I send it to them just to kind of help out the projects. So let's go ahead first. We're going to kali.org, Kali.org. Okay, let's minimize this. Here is Kali Linux. Let me go right to the home page here first. All right, it says it's the most advanced penetration testing distribution. What's a distribution? Well, a distribution is a packaged version of Linux, and there is many of them. There is so many different packages of Linux that you can choose from. Folks, how many packages of Windows are there? I know there's Windows 7, there's Windows 10, there's Windows, Windows now 11. I'm talking the standard latest kernel, the latest up-to-date version of Linux with so many different desktop environments. You're going to find something you're going to love to use, and it's going to be easy for you to understand. Most of these desktop environments are set up just like Windows. There's point-and-click applications, and it's really, really easy to use. So don't be frightened of it. I know I was when I first started. I thought, oh, man, I can't use this command line terminal thing. I'll never understand this. And after some patience and practice, I was able to get the hang of it. So today what we're going to do is we're going to go to download. And there's there's many different ways you can see here you can actually install this thing. WSL is Windows Subsystem for Linux. I would not recommend that. To me, WSL is a great tool on Windows, and it's an underlying Linux kernel that runs kind of within Windows, within some kind of a virtualization machine, some kind of container. I don't even really know how to explain it, so I wouldn't recommend that. What I would recommend is either an image installer, which is an ISO file. So an ISO file is just, they take the whole entire disk, right? Remember we used to have CDs at one time. I know a lot of you younger people out there have never installed from a CD. We used to have a CD. We would take that CD and we put it in a CD drive. We would install our software. Sounds kind of antiquated now. But anyway, let's talk a little bit more about. So ISOs is they take that CD, they compress it down to what's called an image. You download that image and you can install that in VirtualBox. We're not going to do it that way. I think it's easier, and I show my students to download the actual virtual machine that's already built. So this is virtual machines is right here in the green. You click on that, and there's a couple different flavors down here, okay, or different types of software that's used. VMware, VirtualBox, and QEMU. Now we are using VirtualBox, and we are going to be using the 64-bit VirtualBox. So you'll click on that and actually download the software. Now when you download the software, it's going to download as a 7Z file. Now if you know what 7Z is, great. Good for you. Good going. If you don't know what it is, 7Z is 7-zip. It's a zipping program or a compression program that's been around for as long as I can remember. For whatever reason, the people that built these virtual box images or virtual hard drives, you could call them, they built them and they compressed them with 7-zip. I don't know why, but they chose it. So what we have to do is you have to go out to right here, 7-zip.org. You're going to download, there's a download link, download the one on top. I believe you probably have a 64-bit operating system. So if you know you have a 32-bit operating system, by all means do that. If you're running on ARM processors, which you're probably not, so download the 64-bit. Once you download that, it's a simple download. Download it and install it on your system because you're going to need 7-zip to uninstall the virtual hard drive. Once we have 7-zip installed, pull this out. This is the actual file you're going to get downloaded right here, if you can see that. It is Kali Linux -2202-4-VirtualBox now it says AMD 64. Don't worry about it. If you have an Intel, it's going to work just fine. .7Z. You'll right click on that and you'll go down here to 7-zip, come over and say extract here. Now I've done all that already for the sake of time for the video, because if I didn't, you'd be sitting here watching my files unzip and download, and it's kind of boring. So it's going to take a little while. It's a pretty big file. It took me about, on this particular computer, about 10 minutes, maybe 5. But you're going to get a folder here called Kali Linux 2022.4-VirtualBox-AMD.64. Now let me show you one thing you got to take a note of that many of my students miss. So when I click on this, it's going to actually download it right here, okay? But I want to show you up here. Right here is the username and password, Kali and Kali. So many of the students get this all loaded up and get it working and get it operational. They're like, oh, excuse me, Mr. Jack's Tech Hut. I don't know the username and password. It's Kali and Kali. It tells you right there, okay? Can you change it? Absolutely, you can change it later. Now, once I unzip that, I have a folder I showed you guys the other day. Maybe I didn't. Under storage called ISO. I also have a folder here called VM. Okay. Kali 2 is right there. Kali 2 is where my files are. So what I want to go back here is I'm going to go to ISO. And I'm going to grab both of these files. Right click on them and copy them. And we'll go back up to storage. Go back down to VM. Go to Kali 2. And I'm going to paste these right under Kali 2, under my VMs. Hopefully this doesn't take but a few minutes here. Just copy that through there. So again, folks, please work with me here. Don't be afraid of Linux. It seems like it's a bad word. If you're in the tech field, and one of the greatest things that you can learn, I always tell my students, one of the greatest things you can have in your digital tool belt is the knowledge of how to use Linux. The Linux kernel is everywhere you go. Probably, I would say 85% of the internet runs on Linux or some variation of Linux. All of our network switches, all of our network routers, all of our firewalls, they all have a system, some kind of system running basically on the Linux kernel that's been cleaned up to different variations based on whatever their architectures or their engineers want to design so they can run on that particular type of hardware. So through these lessons, through Jack's Tech Hut, over time, I will show you even how to set up a Linux server. I'll show you how to share files across that server, just like you would on Windows. But guys, you're doing it for free, right? All these different variations are free. Now you might say, well, wait a minute, wait, Jack, wait. How do you do it how do they do it for free? They do it for free because a lot of software designers got together and they work together, on their off hours. Software engineers are a very interesting set of people. They do this all day long, and then they come home, they want to do it some more. But they want to work on projects that are open source, that are helping people in the world that nobody's really making money on. And that's exactly what they're doing. So they contribute to these different packages. You can do the same. If you're a programmer, you can contribute to these packages. If not, you can maybe write documentation to the packages, right? There's so much you can do to help out open source community, and I hope that you do that. At the very least, the very smallest thing that open source people will tell you can do is donate a couple bucks to their project to help them going. And most of that money goes to server space. They have to have hosting services to host all these files to download. It doesn't really go to the open source community that's building the software. Most of it goes to the resources to deliver the software to you. Okay, so we just moved these files. Now, this says VirtualBox machine and a virtual disk image. So the red one is the disk image, and the top one here is the VirtualBox machine. Now, we don't have to install these. They're already built. That's why I wanted to put them in the correct place, under Kali 2. So here is our VirtualBox software from Oracle, our free VirtualBox software. Let's get rid of this. We are simply going to go ahead and click on New. We want to create a new machine. I'm going to call this one Kali 2. Kali 2. The folder is my folder. I don't want it there, though. Let's move this. Other. And we are going to go to Storage. VM. We're going to select that. The ISO image is not selected. Okay, so let's see here. And we're not going to select an ISO image. Let's see here next. This is a version of Linux, and we're going to select Other 64-bit Linux. Hit Next. At this point, we're going to set our base memory. How much RAM do you want? I got it set for 2. That's fine. Processors is set for 1, and that's absolutely fine. Hit Next. How much hard drive do you want? 20 gigs is plenty. Or it says use an existing virtual hard drive file. Let's check that. What we want to do now is we're going to go out, and we're going to find out, we're going to add that virtual file that we downloaded. Let's go to D. That's why it's so important to know where you put this. VM. Okay. Kali 2. And that's the virtual file that we have. Click OK. So it's right here. Let's click on Choose. And we're going to click on Next. So our virtual machine at this point should be fine, and it should be set up. Click on Finish. Once you have that done, all we have to do is simply power it on and keep our fingers crossed that this is going to work. So click on Start. Another good time for a sip of coffee here. All right. So welcome to Grub. Grub is the bootloader, so that looks good. Kali Linux is coming up. That also looks good. Let's close this all the way here. Let me expand it to full screen. Just to get rid of all the distractions. Loading the initial RAM disk it's talking about. So let's see what this does and how this works out for us. Maybe it's not liking full screen. And we have our famous Kali logo, okay, coming up on the boot screen. So you see it this way. The pre-built images, when they work really, really well. And all your software is already in there, and the image is pre-built to the point where we didn't have to go through and install all the ISO and wait for all that. So remember, the username is Kali. The password is Kali. And we'll click on Login. And you give it a minute. And once we get it up here, I'm going to try to get full screen again, see if it'll go. There it goes. All right, so it actually resized itself. It is full screen on this monitor. This is a 24-inch monitor, and it's full screen on here. So this is running the XFCE desktop environment. Maybe in the next video, I think what I'm going to do is next video, I'm definitely going to show you around Linux a little bit, get you more accustomed to Linux itself. Once we go through that, I think I'm also going to show you how to add some desktop environments just to make it comfortable to you, to the way you work, your workflow. I work very well in XFC. I don't have a problem with it. It runs very well for me, and I've kind of been using it long enough to understand it. But all XFC is your start button is up here, this little Kali logo on the top left. If I click it, these are all the tools that we have to work with, like in gathering information. We have Nmap in there for scanning ports we talked about. We have Legend, which is another great tool for vulnerability testing. Web applications, there's that burp suite we talked about earlier, Skipfish, SQL mapping, WP Scan for scanning WordPress websites, database assessments, password attackers, wireless attacks. There's our Aircrack NG we talked about earlier. Bluetooth, we can hack Bluetooth signals. Reverse engineering, exploration tools. You can see the Metasploit framework is in there. The MSF payloader creator is in there. We're going to be talking about that later. Sniffing tools, there's that great Wireshark program I'm going to show you how to use to capture packets on a network and understand what's on the network. Post exploration tools is stuff that we use after we do our penetration testing. Forensics tools is just that. It's different tools to do forensics on computers and hard drives. Here's some reporting tools we'll look at and see what kind of reporting we can do. Social engineering. I'll talk to you about social engineering and how that works. That's normally like the second or third part of an attack that we're going to do. And then you got the Kali links here to the different types of stuff like exploit database. I think I showed you some of these. These are all the actual links that were built into Firefox. Once you do this and you have all this set up, the first thing you want to do, because we don't know how old this particular Kali Linux is, this image. So the first thing I want you to do is run 2 commands. And this is going to already get you to the point where you're like, hey, Jack, I'm not really scared of that terminal. Open up terminal, which is right here at the very top of the screen. Click on that. Okay, you can see it's a little translucent. It's very pretty. I'm going to try to blow it up here. Let me see if my keyboard works on it. So I can blow it up so you can see what's going on. Okay. You're going to type sudo. So what sudo does is it elevates your privileges and tells the terminal, hey, I am the guy that's allowed to run this command. So you're elevating the privileges so you can install some software. We're going to do apt. Okay, we're not going to really get into apt. Just think of it as a package manager. And update. Okay. When you hit enter, it's going to ask you for that super secret password, which we know is Kali. And hit enter. At this point, what it's doing, it's looking out on the internet for any new packages for this particular version of Kali Linux or whatever Linux you're running. And it's downloading those packages. So it's getting them down to the computer itself. It's pulling those all down. And this part of it should not take too long. I shouldn't have to pause the video. We should be okay here. Well, I hope so. Make sure we don't eat some words here. All right. So we will see here if we get these pulled down. Okay. So it says we have 1,106 packages can be upgraded. Now, what's that telling you? how long was that image put on Kali Linux? That's why you want to do this right away. As soon as you put it up or as soon as you install any version of Linux, you should run the updates on it. The next thing we're going to run here is we are going to run the upgrade command. What the upgrade command does is it takes all those packages that was just downloaded and it puts them onto the computer system. It upgrades it. So sudo apt upgrade. Notice we have to type our password in now because we just did. Type a capital Y for yes and hit enter. At this point, it's going to take those packages and start installing them onto the Kali Linux itself. And with that said, we are going to pause just shortly here. I'm going to pause the video until this is done. Okay, at that point, it is now officially done. You can see it on the screen here where everything has been updated and we're good to go. That was it on using the terminal to run an update. Pretty simple, huh? Not a problem whatsoever. Just close out the terminal here. And that's it. So folks, I hope you've enjoyed this video on how to set up Kali Linux. And again, we downloaded the VirtualBox hard drive already set up for us. All we had to do was attach it to VirtualBox and we were good to go. Very, very simple. Don't forget to download 7-zip. It makes it easier to unzip that. Now, I'm sure there's other utilities out there that will work, but 7-zip works very well for that particular instance. So until next time, as I always tell you, keep practicing, be patient, and YouTube will learn everything you need to learn to do penetration testing and a little bit more about a little investigative background work on different people. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. And at the start of this video, I told you I was going to ask you for something and I wanted to wait until the very end. Folks, if you've been enjoying this video series and this is something that you want to learn, please take a minute and click on that subscribe button. I would really appreciate it. It helps the videos out. It helps the channel grow, being this is a new channel. And it's going to help us get more people involved with doing penetration testing and basic white hat hacking. So until next time, I'll see you back here very soon. Bye for now.